The Word of God is serious. Can you say amen? You don't play with it. You don't mock it. You don't reject it. You don't manipulate it. You obey it.
Welcome to the program Warning. This is Dr. Jonathan Hansen, President of World Ministries International, and once again, I welcome you to our program Warning. Today I'm continuing with my special guest, Attorney Stephen PIDGEON. Attorney PIDGEON has fought in the United States Supreme Court. He's a personal friend. I've got him on this Christian television program covering our stations around the world because he's also a very strong and serious Christian. He realizes what's going on in the United States as well as around the world, not only to dissolve, one, the sovereignty of the United States of America, but to dissolve the sovereignty of every nation on earth as the world elitists try to usher in this new world order. He understands again the real spirit and the goal of Islam. We're in desperate trouble. He has written 3 books. He's the author of The Obama Error. The Obama Error. I haven't read it, but I'm going to read it. I'm not sure much what an error is because I think it should be called the Obama liar or deception. But see, I'm so tired of pulling punches. We are in desperate trouble. We are in lawlessness. Lies are being purported, whether it's from congressmen, senators, House of Representatives, attorneys, the president. One lie after another, after another, after another, after another. In fact, as Attorney PIDGEON was writing the Obama Error, he had to keep adding new chapters because of a constant continuation of felony crimes that the president, according to Stephen PIDGEON, has committed. He had to finally put a caboose on it, or I'm not sure where this book would have gone. I guess we could put a series on it like encyclopedias. But the Obama Error, Behold a Pale Green Horse is another book, and Behold a White Horse. I'm really interested in the Obama Error for today's program, though. I just want to read you a few statements from my article that will come out August 2011, What the Founding Fathers Thought of Homosexuality and Islam. Now, I'm just going to skim it over. You can telephone the number on your screen, and you can get this article free of charge, and every month you can get my articles free. America was founded on Jesus Christ. Judeo-Christian values, morality, and ethics were believed, taught, and enforced in society, from the courtrooms to the classrooms to the living rooms and in politics. Islam believes that the entire world must submit to Allah, or they must be killed. Throughout history, until this current politically correct era, leaders throughout America and around the world have called the Islamic prophet Muhammad a madman who spread deception, destruction, and death with a 7th century revelation from a fraudulent spirit. President Thomas Jefferson initiated the Barbary Wars on Islam from 1801 through 1805 because Muslims were killing older Americans and taking the younger Americans hostage to be sold as slaves. The United States was having to pay tribute and ransom to get them back. President Jefferson defeated Islam in the Barbary Wars, and the world defeated Islam in 1929 and abolished the Caliphate. In February 2011, in the issue Whistleblower, George Washington, quote, believed that sodomy, an infamous crime that was to be abhorred and detested. In the case of the court-martial Lieutenant Frederick Gotthold Ensslin, tried March 10, 1778, his sentence was to be drummed out of the camp with infamy, never to return. William Blackstone, who wrote commentaries on the law, once the very foundation of American legal jurisprudence, could scarcely bring himself to mention the subject of homosexual sodomy, which he called a disgrace to human nature. Thomas Jefferson authorized a bill penalizing sodomy by castration. In New York, the penalty for the detestable and abominable vice of buggery was hanging. Likewise, Connecticut laws required the death penalty. Georgia was a little more liberal, the penalty being life imprisonment at hard labor. Maine, Pennsylvania, from 1 year at hard labor to death. John Adams, the founder of the U.S. Navy, said October 13, 1798, "We have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions unbridled by morality and religion. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other." And it goes on and on. We as Christians are in a spiritual and cultural battle. Ladies and gentlemen, now I'm not trying to make people hate the homosexual. Jesus died for the homosexual like he did for any other person or sin. But we do need to make it very clear that that behavior, as well as lying or any other immoral behavior, adultery, fornication, cohabitation, that will separate you from God. That will finally have eternal judgment if you die without repenting and changing that behavior. Judgment is coming on individuals. Judgment is coming on the United States of America. Sodom and Gomorrah, as it continued in its sins, finally, that tremendous judgment. And right at the very end, what was it? It was same-sex marriage, so to speak. Homosexuality in abundance. Even willing to rape angels. Where are we now in America where we say anything goes and we are protecting the homosexual and promoting his immorality at the highest levels? I really question about the President of the United States and his sexual attitude and private behavior behind closed doors. Why in the world is the President so much in favor of same-sex marriage? Or, let's say, protecting the rights of gay partners. Welcome to the program Warning, Stephen Pidgeon.
Thank you, Dr. Hansen.
We left off yesterday, the last time we did this television program, just touching, as we classified the program as the continual federal crimes of the President of the United States. And we left off going into his Social Security card or number, and you brought out that it's just another case of fraud or corruption.
Identity theft.
Explain.
Well, we believe that his Social Security number, his actual Social Security number began with 999,
okay,
which would be a number that's issued to a foreign national.
Okay.
And that he entered the country as a foreign national to attend Occidental, and that he held this Social Security number 999. Now, in 1982, he adopted a number 442. 442 is a number that comes out of the state of Connecticut. Each Social Security number has a state identifier. And the number that he has, 442, is a Connecticut number. He never lived in Connecticut. Neither did his father. Neither did anyone in his family.
Okay.
And, but the number has since been traced to a fellow who did have that number. And it was a guy named Jean-Paul Ludwig, died in Hawaii in 1982. Thereafter, Obama picks up the number. His grandmother at the time worked in the probate division at a bank and had access to those kinds of documents through the courthouse. Very likely that number was adopted then. Now, that becomes an interesting anomaly because identity theft is a serious federal crime, as is mispersonation.
But it seems this is actually the fourth program, and we've done the other three also covering felony crimes. It seems that he's not afraid of breaking felony law.
No, absolutely not. In fact, you mentioned in the last program that you were talking about the crime of treason.
Yes.
And I mentioned to you that there is a federal crime out there that's called, you have to register as an agent of a foreign principal if you're operating on behalf of a foreign principal. There's specifics to that statute, but given the fact that Obama had accepted money to pay for his Columbia degree, he had accepted money to pay for his Harvard degree, and then proceeded to work on behalf of Palestinian Jihad movement, working as a private funding agent through the Annenberg Foundation, the Woods Foundation, and so on, and working with those people, which included a group that also included Tony Rezko and the Bank of Harvey in Chicago, Illinois, and some other places.
Yes, yes.
That he was, in fact, engaged at all times working with and funding organizations that were just barely outside of the terrorist list with the United States.
Wow.
Until he became president of the United States, which case, within just a few weeks of being president, he signed by executive order a direct funding to Hamas for $20.3 million. Now, Hamas is on the terrorist list. We are at war with Hamas. They are an enemy. Treason is defined as aiding and abetting the enemy. which is exactly what he was doing with American tax dollars. Now, what's important for this discussion is that in 2009, late September 2009, he attended a G20 summit in Pennsylvania. Present at that summit was Erdogan, the president or the prime minister of Turkey. Erdogan, as you know, Walid Shubat has discussed to some degree that he believes that the spirit of Antichrist will rise out of Turkey, the king of the north.
Yes, yes.
And what you have is you have Erdogan. Erdogan met with Obama, and an agreement was reached. An agreement was reached in the fall of 2009. It's very important. And the agreement was to give birth to the Neo-Ottoman Empire. And as you explained in your opening, the Ottoman Empire, the Caliphate collapsed with the collapse of Turkey in 1924. And because the Caliph was dead, the Caliphate suffered a fatal head wound.
Yes, yes,
That's
yes.
how they describe it in Islam, the suffering of a fatal head wound. Now we have discussion about healing this fatal head wound and creating this Eighth Empire to control the Levant. And this Eighth Empire, Neo-Ottoman Empire, which will be the tripartite relationship between Turkey, Iraq, and Iran. And who is behind this? Well, the agreement was made behind closed doors in September at the G20 summit between Barack Obama and Erdogan. So what you have is you have a very interesting coordination going on, because all of the revolutions that are taking place in Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Sudan, Egypt, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Syria, even Lebanon, all of those, there's nothing happening in Turkey, have we noticed? There's no Sunni uprising in Turkey. And what is amazing is that Barack Obama, who has kicked Tony Rezko under the bus, kicked Rod Blagojevich under the bus, kicked Rahm Emanuel under the bus, kicked Reverend Jeremiah Wright under the bus, kicked Bill Ayers under the bus, has now kicked the Saudi royal family under the bus to the point that the Saudi royal family has come public with it and said, we're now going to China. They have said in this most recent week, we are prepared to take on Iran by ourselves because we cannot trust the American government anymore. They do not trust Obama. And it was written in the press very explicitly that he had betrayed, like Judas Iscariot, President Hosni Mubarak. And Louis Farrakhan, the head of the Nation of Islam, absolutely went apoplectic to denounce Barack Obama in his betrayal of Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. Now, this is what's another crime that I could hardly document in the book. The attack on Libya is absolutely against international law. We had no national interest in Libya whatsoever. They hadn't perpetrated any crime against us whatsoever. Who we are funding, 111 members of that group that's breaking away in the rebellion were actually al-Qaeda members fighting American troops in Iraq. So we're in this weird place that has Muammar Gaddafi fighting against people who were killing Americans in Iraq, and Barack Obama seeking to break international law with direct funding of these rebels in the time of civil war. Now that violates the very first premise of the UN Charter.
And why isn't there a problem right now with Obama wanting to overthrow the Turkish government? Because it's already turning radical.
Oh, yeah, well, look, he's getting ready to move on Syria.
See?
And what he's going to do in Syria is he is going to he's coordinating with President Gül and Erdogan out of Turkey right now to orchestrate a Turkish invasion of Syria.
So he doesn't need to overthrow that government. It is already moving radical.
That's correct.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, what you must understand is what you're seeing around the world is not a good thing. This is not a good thing that Egypt was overthrown, Mubarak. It's not a good thing even in Libya with Gaddafi. Yes, these aren't saints. They are bad men. But what is happening right now, the president, the CIA, and our supposed government is helping these radicals overthrow their government, the Muslim Brotherhood and Hezbollah, and you get into Hamas and Al-Qaeda, and we are starting to arm these people, and when they take over the governments, you've got another Iran, only you've got the whole region as radical as Iran. So that's the bad thing. I mean, Jimmy Carter betrayed the Shah of Iran that used to be our good ally, and now we got this radical president that's threatening to bring this nuclear apocalyptic war that's described in the Quran by Muhammad to usher in their Messiah, their Mahdi. Mm-hmm. And this is what's happening with all these Middle East countries, Steve.
Sure, and they're screaming death to America. And now there's another important point that broke this week in the news. Iraq and Iran have joined together to issue an ultimatum to Saudi Arabia to get out of Bahrain. Bahrain is our chief military port in the Persian Gulf. That's where we house our American ships to keep shipping open in the Persian Gulf that ships 34% of our oil and over 40% of the oil that empowers Europe. And the Iraq and Iran. Iraq, where we have spent hundreds of billions of dollars liberating them, is now in unity with Iran. And what I'm saying to you is this, Dr. Hansen, Turkey is about to join that unity.
Yes, I agree.
As soon as they take Syria. Once they take Syria, Turkish troops, you're going to see of the largest army ever mustered by Turkey, march through Syria and march into Israel.
What you got is you've got your Ezekiel 38-39 coalition, which involves also the ungodly alliance of Russia and Persia or Iran, and all Muslim nations that is described coming against Israel. And you know, Iraq, it's one of the Muslim nations that is even led by the Antichrist, right at Armageddon. I mean, Iraq, Iran, they'll never be a loyal ally to the United States. They're nations identified that's going to attack Israel.
Yeah, the leopard, the bear, and the lion. Now, what's equally important here is that the orchestration, and there is hard evidence on the table that the Obama administration, beginning in April of 2009, began to work with the Muslim Brotherhood to overthrow Mubarak in Egypt.
Yes.
The Muslim Brotherhood was formed in 1928 with one purpose: to restore the caliphate. That's why it was formed. It was formed to restore the caliphate. They are the founders of Al-Qaeda. They're the founders of Hamas. They're the founders of Hezbollah. They're the founders of Islamic Jihad. If you're looking to say, well, let's have a war against terrorism, and you wanted to identify the source of the terrorism in Islam, it's the Muslim Brotherhood.
And they're sworn to put Islam, Sharia law, over the entire world.
That's correct.
And abolish every nation's constitution.
That's correct. And abolish it and to replace it with the Hadith and
That's
to replace
right.
it with the Quran.
That's right.
And which will impose Sharia law. And this is coming to the United States. In fact, Elena Kagan was appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court because she is an open sympathizer to Sharia law.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're also meddling in Pakistan's affairs to impose a harsh Sharia there. We're meddling in Nigeria to impose a harsh Sharia. We meddled with the bloodthirsty new president of Cote d'Ivoire in order to impose Sharia. We're trying to impose Sharia in Kenya, and we're trying to impose a radical Sharia in Egypt.
That's exactly right.
So is it any surprise that Sharia would be coming to the United States? Now, there's some other orchestrations going on here, too, that are important. I believe that our western seaboard has been sold out. I believe that it has been gifted to China. Do I have hard evidence of that? There was a lot of scuttlebutt that Hillary Clinton made that deal, and that and would they tell us? No, they won't tell us. But I can tell you that if you look closely at the scriptures in Ezekiel 38-39, you have the armies of Gog and Magog coming against the house of Israel to come after their resources, and they come against unwalled cities. That's a very important point. Now, I can tell you the most important resource in the very near future is not going to be oil. It is going to be fresh water. Fresh water is the most important resource. The Chinese are almost out of water. They've virtually exhausted their fresh water supplies, as has the southeastern United States. So we are looking at major drought conditions worldwide. Fresh water will become infinitely more valuable, and the Chinese will look to those sources for fresh water, even if they must look militarily.
Also, if somebody understands Scripture, not only fresh water, but it describes it. I believe Israel right now is under, or I should say over, but there's an extreme amount of oil in Israel that's going to be exposed to the world in the near future.
Mm-hmm. The Holy Land will be self-sustaining.
You've got not only water, but you've got oil. Israel right now is already one of the wealthiest, if not the wealthiest nation, not only in the Middle East, but per capita of millionaires in the world.
And Israel, and Dr. Hansen, let me just say, I believe that Israel there is a certain amount of blessing that will come upon Israel. It's not going to be the Israel that exists today, because there will be a West Bank pull away. I believe the Turks, the Neo-Ottoman Empire, will control Jerusalem. But the tent of Judah will live at peace on the coast.
Yeah, but the point is to see the wealth that's there and put hooks in their jaws to attack.
To attack, that's correct. And so the alliance, again, the leopard, Turkey, the lion, Iraq, the bear, Persia.
Yeah.
Joining together. It's going to happen as soon as this war breaks out between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So you see, these things are very important. Now, Obama, where he factors into this, is working with the Muslim Brotherhood in order to create a neo-caliphate, a neo-Ottoman empire, makes him an agent of a foreign principle.
Yes.
The fact that he has directed funds to Hamas, who is a designated enemy on the terrorist list, is an act of treason. That treason was covered over by the United States Congress, who then ratified the funding and put an additional $900 million on the table as well. So what you have is you no longer have a constitutional republic. I've got to emphasize this point. What we have now is empire. We have a lawless empire, an empire that worships Baal and Ashtaroth, and who is being overcome by the satanic forces of Islam, and who have made backroom deals. Let's call them pacts with Sheol, if you will, to carve off portions of this country in anticipation of the nation that they expect to remain, which will not include our portion of this country.
Well, the world elitists have already divided the entire world into 10 regions. And I covered them in last year's conferences. But we know there's a huge plan, scheme, conspiracy, although not much of a conspiracy any longer. It's right out on the table that they're dividing the world up for a new world order.
Mm-hmm. And they intend to swarm up, gather up, if you will, all of the banking interest into this country,
Totally.
into one bank.
Totally.
And it'll be one bank that'll be trans-European, trans-North American bank. They're on the verge of it. It's within 60 days.
Well, like you brought out on one of our television programs, the banks in Britain, as the British never formally ended war with the United States, they're continually trying to take over the United States through their banking system.
Yeah, that's correct. And the fact that we have abandoned the foundation of this country, and this goes to the Declaration of Independence. We were founded upon the premise that said, we assert a claim to independence based upon the laws of nature and of nature's God,
yes,
which was a claim to righteousness under the Torah, and which exalted the Torah above the law of nations. We exercised on that law during World War II when we convicted the Nazi leadership of crimes against humanity. Their defense was Romans 13:1, saying, I was obeying the governing authorities. And we said to them, you should have read the scripture more closely, because there is an authority superior to the state, which is the authority of God as expressed in his word, the Torah.
Well, that's what the Pilgrims used to break away from England to begin with.
That's exactly right.
A higher authority.
That is our only claim to independence, is that higher authority. That's our only claim. And if we abandon that higher authority, we no longer have a lawful claim to independence.
That's the reason why the Constitution and Bill of Rights are so important. Inalienable rights under God.
Now, let's put this on the table. If Barack Hussein Obama is in fact a British subject, which we can prove that he is a British subject, and we have lost our sovereignty because we have abandoned the Torah, his implementation of Islam into the nation and his economic jihad against the nation, which I don't know any other way you can express it. We're at $14.294 trillion in debt right now. When we go above that debt ceiling, we go into insolvency. The whole world knows it. Standard & Poor's is downgraded us. Moody is downgraded us. All the large hedge funds are shorting our bonds. China is getting ready to ditch 2/3 of its cash holdings. Gold has exceeded $1,500 an ounce. Silver's about to crest $50 an ounce. The whole world knows that the dollar is gone as a result of the economic jihad perpetrated against this country by our leadership. And
we're talking about much more than Obama.
That's correct. We are. We're talking about an international banking conspiracy. However, the international banks do not understand that Mr. Obama, who has kicked all of his friends under the bus, everybody who has backed him has been kicked under the bus. He will kick them under the bus as well. When it comes time for it to be a question of Islam or the New World Order, he has already said in print, I will side with Islam.
2 minutes.
Well, the long and the short of it is that you have somebody who is not demonstrably an American citizen, who can't demonstrate what his real name is, who can't demonstrate his lawful authority to be in the nation, can't demonstrate his lawful authority to be in office, holding the most powerful position in the world and extolling and acting on behalf of Islam and the recreation of the Neo-Ottoman Empire.
Now, in your book, Obama Air, does it cover these areas?
Yes, it does.
What else does it cover that we haven't touched on?
Well, it covers the draft registration fraud.
Oh, yes.
He signed up for a draft actually in 2008. This is demonstrated on DebbieSchusel.com. She's the one who got the FOIA and got the information. He was using a Social Security number he didn't obtain until 1982 because it belonged to somebody else in 1980. He claimed that he signed up in 1979. There was no draft in 1979. So they had to readjust that. They forged a document. He claims he signed up for the draft in 1980.
One minute.
Didn't. That means that he registered for the draft after age 26. In fact, he was age 40-something when he registered for the draft. Under the rules of the federal rules, if you fail to register for the draft before your 26th birthday and you had a lawful obligation to do so, you cannot hold a position in the federal government. If you were not an American citizen and you failed to register for the draft and you were in the nation between the ages of 18 and 26 and you failed to register for the draft, unless you were exempt, you cannot ever be an American citizen. You can't ever naturalize it as an American citizen. You're permanently prohibited from doing that.
Not only that, they'd classify you as a draft dodger.
That's correct. He failed on both cases. Now, the only reason that he could have failed is if he was in here as a foreign national under an F-1 visa. So I'm here as a foreign national under an F-1 visa. I don't have to register. Well, if you're here as a foreign national under an F-1 visa, you're most assuredly not an American citizen and not a natural-born citizen. Those are the choices.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think you can tell this is fascinating, but more than fascinating, it's dead serious. I need all the money you can give as we continue to do everything we can to expose reality way more than on these television stations. This needs to go on national television. Please, write checks out for 100,000, 10,000. Somebody out there could actually write me a check for $1 million. God bless you.
Note, today's program was recorded April 27, 2011, on the very day that the long-form birth certificate was released. Graphics pros challenge Obama's birth certificate, labeling it also as a forgery. Dr. Hansen will be doing another TV program with attorney Stephen Pidgeon, focusing on this long-form, worthless birth certificate.
I don't think you need to really pray about it. You need to just do it. You don't pray about going to the grocery store and buying milk, eggs, or cheese. You don't pray about buying a dress or going on a vacation. So once you see people in need, why don't you pray for your own heart, that you have a heart of compassion, and that you'll help us help the people in Liberia.
Help our benevolence ministry. Give to the poor. Give food, clothes, health care. Join us, and join us in the mission field. Help us financially. Write a check to World Ministries International, P.O. Box 277, Stanwood, Washington, 98292, or call our office at 360-629-5248 so that you can be a part of this wonderful commission. God bless you. God richly bless you. Shalom.